Well, everybody, I took the plunge and watched the movie Heretic today, which is a movie about two sister missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints being trapped in a guy's house in a, horror movie unfolding, etc. This is going to be a spoiler review. I will tell you that my non-spoiler review on this movie is that if you're a believing member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's not really a reason to see this movie. They get some things right. The portrayal is not that bad, but there's also enough things that they get wrong, and the entire thesis and premise of the movie is very anti-religion, and it kind of feels like they just happen to use our religion as the vehicle for this anti-religious message that the movie presents. And so that's the non-spoiler review. Starting right now will be the spoiler review, so from now on, if you're planning on seeing this movie and don't want to get spoilers, stop watching now. The first question I have about this movie is, where the heck is Topher Grace's companion? Topher Grace plays the character of Elder Kennedy, and Topher Grace is 46 years old. He's got a name tag on that says Elder Kennedy. There's no explanation as to who this guy is, why he's the age that he is, or what he's doing in, like... People are going to watch this movie and get the impression that there is a guy who hangs out in our local wards who will periodically go out and search for missing missionaries. Like, the character of Topher Grace, like, he's not a mission president. Screen Rant in their review says, Topher Grace's cameos as Elder Kennedy, one of the leaders of the church from whence the two young girls are dispatched upon their mission. There's nobody in the church who fills the role that Topher Grace fills in this movie. If he were a mission president, it would have said President Kennedy. It doesn't make sense. Like, who is Topher Grace? He behaves and acts like a regular proselyting missionary, but he has no companion, and he's way too old, even with this recent policy change. It just doesn't make sense. My second critique of the movie is that at the point when Hugh Grant begins to ask the girls questions that are made to rattle their faith, for example, when he brings up Joseph Smith's polygamy and his theory that the reason that Joseph Smith started his religion was because he wanted to justify having lots of schmecks with lots of different women behind his wife's back. All of that reads like the people who wrote this movie were like, what's something that we can say about this? Oh, I know. Go get the CES letter and open it up and see what it says about that. The true history on Joseph Smith's practice of polygamy is much more nuanced. History shows that, by and large, most of his marriages to his additional wives were just spiritual in nature. There was never any physical consummation. And so Heretic fails in the way that it presents that part of it. And so it just feels like they were very lazy in opening some resource and just cutting and pasting some bullet points from that. It's very poor on the history in that regard. The person who I was watching it with, at one point I leaned over when they're still in the beginning of the movie. They're sitting in Hugh Grant's living room, and the lights go out, and I lean over to him and I say, when you were on your mission, would you have left by now? And he goes, I'm not a sister missionary, so I don't know. And I'm grateful that he made that comment, because it allowed me, for those of you who've met me in real life, I'm really tall. There are very few times in my life when I have felt physically threatened by anything. For the most part, if I'm ever in a situation that requires physicality to get out of it, I'm able to get out of it. That being said, growing up, my dad, who was also very tall, always used to say, boys, because my brother's even taller than me, boys, be careful, because a short guy with a pew-pew is tougher than you, no matter how tall or big you are. So, stay out of trouble is basically what he was saying. But I'm grateful for my friend's comment, because it allowed me to view the movie from the sisters' perspective, in that they were not going to be able to physically overpower their way out of it. Because there's a point where they get locked in and they can't get the door open. And in my mind, I'm just like, kick the door down. Kick it until it breaks, Which then, if Hugh Grant's character would have heard that, it would have caused the physical altercation if he would have tried to prevent them. So that really wasn't an option for them. And so I'm grateful for my friend's comment that he wasn't a sister missionary, and so he didn't know if he would have left by then or not. The reason I asked him that question is because I had an experience on my mission. I was waiting for my visa in Atlanta, Georgia, that had a very similar vibe to the situation that these sister missionaries get in with Hugh Grant. We were outside in this guy's front yard. He was sitting in his driveway on a lawn chair. My mission companion and I approached, and we started having this conversation with him. I wasn't very new. I hadn't been out on the mission for very long, so I wasn't the one really having the conversation. But this guy started getting into all these sort of like metaphysical claims about the church and how it is related to astrology and all this really sort of weird stuff, right? Because the types of questions that Hugh Grant is asking of these sister missionaries are not the types of questions that you usually hear. And so this situation in Atlanta with this guy outside of his house was another one of those situations where it was not the type of sort of anti and arguments that you normally would hear as a missionary. But as we're sitting there talking to this guy, I noticed that sitting about 5 feet from him on his driveway, there is a backpack sitting there. And I kid you not, as we're sitting here talking to this guy, and actually there was another 2 missionaries with us, so there's 4 of us talking to this one guy out in his front yard, and he's making these, very strong atheist arguments, and actually in some ways he sort of repeats Hugh Grant's argument that all religions are just, they're all just iterations of the same themes, etc. But he's making all of these weird claims, and there's a very bad feeling, like spiritually it does not feel good, the types of things that this guy is saying. And I kid you not, as I'm sitting there, we're having this conversation, there's a bush about 5 feet away from this backpack that is sitting on this guy's driveway. And as I'm sitting there talking to him, I notice a green snake slither out of the bush, curl up around the guy's backpack, take a look at the world, flick its tongue in and out a couple of times, slither down off the backpack, and go back into the bush. And I saw that, and I was like, hey, elders, we're leaving right now, okay? Like, we've had this conversation. This is fun, but we're out. And we left. And this movie and the setup that the sisters get in had the same kind of feeling that experience that I had as a missionary had. So I am of the opinion that this movie never would have happened because the sisters would have gotten that vibe and they would have left way before the events of this movie take place. And I'm just going to add that I think the Lord really does watch out for and protect his missionaries. And one of the places that captures that is actually the youth theme for 2025, Doctrine and Covenants 84, verse 88, which says, "And whoso receiveth you, there I will be also. For I will go before your face, I will be on your right hand and on your left hand, and my spirit shall be in your hearts, and mine angels round about you to bear you up." Now, missionaries are not safe 100% of the time. There are instances where missionaries are, the victims of some kind of violence or crime or things like that. But for the most part, in my experience, missionaries are protected at a miraculous rate from things that would cause them harm. So I think these missionaries would have gotten some help from on high before they were led into Hugh Grant's house. But then the movie wouldn't have happened, right? Oh, I hope that Ryan George does a pitch meeting for this movie. The next thing I will say is that there was a lack of 2 things that these sister missionaries would have fallen back on very quickly if this were real life. Number one is they would have borne testimony. There are a couple of times where they refute and give some pushback to what Hugh Grant's character is saying in the movie, but that pushback would have always been followed by sister missionaries with bearing of testimony about Jesus Christ, about his gospel, about the truth claims of the restored church. So the lack of testimony didn't quite feel real. The second thing that was missing in the movie until the very, very end was prayer. In real life, if sister missionaries had gotten into this type of situation, they would have been saying prayers throughout the entire movie. They would have talked to each other about prayer. They would have been praying in their hearts. There is an utter lack of prayer in this entire movie, and so I think the makers of this movie got that wrong. With the lack of testimony, I actually said to my friend, playfully, maybe they left the testimonies out because they didn't want anybody watching this movie to feel the Holy Ghost when they bore their testimonies. As a horror movie, I think that this movie, Heretic, is about a B. When Sister Barnes, here's a spoiler, gets her throat slashed, that just happens too quickly, and there's not enough of a setup that it's going to happen. And so I just think that some of the story beats in this movie are a little bit off as a pure horror film. The meta, bigger narrative on this movie is that religion is about control and that you have to take violent action to escape from that control. And I don't think that's a good message for the world. No need to see this one, folks. It's not that good.